My name is Eric Van Horn. I bought my first franchise in my 20s, and since then, I've owned 6 brands with 25 stores in 8 states. I've also helped 1,000 people find the right franchise for them. People like us who are not cut out for the 9-to-5 and like to work smarter, not harder. How do we find the right franchise, buy it, grow it, sell it, and how do we do it in a way to own the business without it owning us? Those are the questions, and I'm on a mission to give you the answers. Welcome to Franchise Secrets. Welcome to the Franchise Secrets podcast. It's Eric Van Horn here with my guest today, John Ruhlin, bestselling author of Giftology. He's a new friend of mine, and we got to spend some time together. And I knew about him before we actually met. And so he's got this book called Giftology that's like something that I'm diving deep into, how to get more retention out of your people that are already customers, greater loyalty. And it's just things that blew my mind when I heard him speak and I read the book. So I'm excited for franchisees, franchisors to dive into this with me, and people that are thinking about buying a franchise or thinking about becoming a franchisor, how to utilize gifts in your business today. So John, welcome to the show.
Eric, thanks for having me, man. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So let's just get started with your origin story. I know you, the circles that I run in, they all know who you are, but a lot of my audience, they may not know who you are and the book Giftology. So where did all this get started?
Yeah, well, there's probably not a ton of people out there like, man, the most important thing in my business today is I just got to buy a good gift. That's probably out of the 147 things you have to do as a business owner or a corporate leader. I mean, that's just not what people think about. And so a lot of times people hear high-end gifting and, you work with entrepreneurs all the way up to the Chicago Cubs. They're like, oh, he must have been born in a cool LA town or New York. And the exact opposite is true. I'm like you. I'm a Midwest dude. I grew up on a farm, one of 6 kids milking goats every morning. That's honestly, it's not, we had a 1-acre garden, 47 acres, hay. When my friends were at the swimming pool, I was baling hay in Ohio summers, 110 degrees, just nasty. And so my life really changed. I was going to go be a doctor, like a DO or a chiropractor or something, because I got really good grades in school. But I met, out of desperation, I started interning with this company called Cutco, the knife company. And I pitched my girlfriend's dad, who was this rainmaker attorney, small country attorney, small business owner. And when you're poor, you notice when people are really generous, and he was always giving things away. He'd find a deal on noodles, give a semi-load of noodles away. And I'm like, Paul, that was 30 grand. Are you insane? And he's like, that's just who I am. And so I work up the courage to pitch him knives, which is an awkward conversation. If you never pitched your girlfriend's dad knives, let alone high-end Cutco knives. And I thought, Paul, you're always giving things away. All your clients are men. They're lawyers, insurance owners, lumber yards, you name it. And maybe at Christmas, they'll give away pocket knives because they're all, dudes that are into the outdoors. And he changed my life forever. He's like, John, I don't want to order pocket knives. Can I order 100 of the high-end paring knives? I'm like, Paul, these are all dudes. You want to give them a kitchen tool? Very chauvinistic. This is literally 19 years ago. I'm 20 years old. And he's like, John, the reason I have more referrals, access, deal flow, the reason everybody will take my phone call, the reason people are going out of their way to advocate for me is I found out one simple truth. And that's if you take care of the family in business, everything else takes care of itself. So it was like a mind-blowing moment for me. I started to mimic this and started to get access to pro sports teams and other companies. And by the time I was a senior in college, there's been about 1.5 million reps and distributors that have come through Cutco's doors since the 40s. And we became their number 1 rep in the history of the company out of 1.5 million people by modeling and teaching what we now call the Giftology system. So we ended up starting basically a gifting service. And we help companies from doing $500,000 in revenue to Google use gifting and gratitude and generosity, not as a check the box at Christmas time, but as a year-round way to differentiate yourself and really grow. And so we've been doing that for the last 19 years, but it all starts back in Ohio, in this small country town.
So you mentioned access. You mentioned that a couple different times. You and I both know how important access to the right people really is, because you and I have access to people that most people do not have access to. And I wasn't born with a silver spoon. I mean, I grew up out here in South Dakota. I didn't milk goats, but I put up fences. And I did that forever. Then I started fighting fires.
Taking the postals, man. Holy crap.
Oh, man.
The worst, and then you hit rock and clay, and it's just nasty. It's horrible.
It is horrible. And then I was doing it in the middle of nowhere, up in the mountains where you didn't have like power tools, and we'd spend a half a day on one stupid hole. It's insane. So that's really where I had the mindset, like, I do not want to work like that for the rest of my life. I got to go to college. That's why I went to college. And then I'm like, I don't want
blue collar. No more blue collar. I don't want to. Nothing wrong with calluses on your hands, but dude, I mean, I left that behind. I do it now for fun to show my girls with, like, but yeah,
it is fun. It's fun getting out there and getting your hands dirty when you don't have to do it.
For one day or for a weekend or for a week. Yeah.
Yes. So what we're doing here is giving you, the audience, access to what John has learned over the years. And if you just caught it, he didn't just come up with all this himself. He learned this from somebody else, and he caught it from them. And so take us deeper into that. You all of a sudden had this, your girlfriend's dad was teaching you things about business, even probably you didn't even recognize it at the time. And then it became your business, and you transformed like what was happening at this company, Cutco.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the anything that we do well, like we learn typically from others. And people are like, oh man, it's so brilliant. Like what you're doing, you're redefining the whole gift category. And I'm like, you realize like a lot of what I'm teaching is like from the Old Testament, like the Bible, like other works of literature and art, like, whether you're a person of faith or not, God's wired the world for reciprocity. Mm-hmm. Robert Cialdini's written books on it. But a lot of people, they don't read the books and they don't seek out people that are doing things differently. And Paul, it wasn't a tactic for him. It was just how he operated. It's just how he chose to engage people. And everybody, it's sexy because of Gary Vee and all these people to talk about playing the long game. Paul was playing the long game long before it was cool to play the long game. Like he would do things 30 years ago that all of a sudden that person is now in a position of influence, and they're like picking up the phone and I saw that. I saw, wow, he did something for somebody 15 years ago, no strings attached. It wasn't a bait and switch or a do this, now give me that. It was, I'm going to pour into relationships. And so when you're poor, you're, like for me, I was just looking for things to model. And I looked at him and I'm like, I want to have the access, the referrals, the deal flow. He would take a 3-hour lunch and it wasn't a big deal. Why? Because he had everybody in the community was like his sales rep. And so I've modeled that. People are like, John, how many sales reps do you have? And I'm like, a couple thousand. And they're like, how do you afford a couple thousand sales reps? And I'm like, well, most people go hire and pay somebody to sell for them. I send gifts. Like last year, my gifting budget, it started out as $500 a month when I was in college, which people thought I was insane. Like, how do you afford $500 a month? And I'm like, that's $6,000 a year. You'll waste that on bar tabs and stupid Abercrombie and Fitch and whatever else. Like, I was investing in relationships. And so now our gifting budget last year was about $550,000.
Wow.
And people are like, oh my gosh, that's insane. I'm like, but I get 1,000 CEOs selling for me, like a Cameron Herold. I couldn't afford Cameron Herold to be a sales rep for me. It cost me 7 figures, that one person. But I've invested over the last 15 years, probably $20,000 in gifts and access and doing things for him. And I can attribute that to a 7 figures. So do the math. That's a 50x return. So when people are like, oh, John, this gifting, that's stupid, that's silly, that's warm fuzzy, that's check the box. I'm like, well, last time I checked, every business, whether you're a franchisee, franchisor, whether you're a widget maker, insurance company, is based on relationships. Relationships to your clients, in centers of influence, people in the community, pillars of the community, client, you name it. And so most people suck. If they're honest with themselves, they suck at showing gratitude. Even their spouse, let alone to their top 10 or top 20 or top 50 relationships. And I saw in Paul, he had a great marriage. He's still married to this day. His 3 daughters. Unfortunately, the relationship blew up, and so I don't have him as a father-in-law. But I still, in the book Giftology, I still attribute a lot of what I learned. Now we tweaked it and we've evolved it, and we keep learning from our clients and from situations. But at the end of the day, people will say, John, does this work in my industry? Like we spoke at Google, and they're like, does this work in technology? And I'm like, Google, how many employees do you have? They're like 60,000. So I'm like, there's human beings here? They're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, then it works. Because it doesn't matter the size of business or industry. People are like, oh, this isn't going to work in the lumber industry. And I'm like, are there human beings? They're like, yep. I'm like, it'll work.
So
it's tied to the root of what we do.
So if you have human beings in your business today, this stuff is going to work. And we're going to get into the weeds of some of this stuff, because What
Yep.
you may think about gifting today is probably completely wrong. And I started to intuitively understand some of this stuff before you and I met. And because I was talking to you, I've given out Peloton bikes before. That's probably the most expensive gift that I've given. And I gave them to my business partners. I have a handful of business partners and I gave it to them because I just appreciated them. But they're on that bike, like, well, they should be on it every day, but they're on that
Let's say
bike.
3 times a week.
Yeah, they're
This is
thinking about me.
every single 3 times a week. Most people are like, oh, John, you spend $5,000 on a knife set. That's stupid. And I'm like, you'll spend $500 on a gift card that gets forgot about or misplaced or consumed. You get what we measure it, cost per impression. You measure it in every other part of your marketing.
Mm-hmm.
But with you give a $2,000 bike or $2,500 or whatever the number is. I forget what my wife paid for the Peloton. But you spend $2,500, so you spend 5 times more than maybe your buddy or competitor or whoever else. But they got 1 impression. You get 3 impressions a week times 50 weeks in a year. There's 150 thoughts. And the reason people do business and refer deals and go out of their way is because you're top of mind.
Mm-hmm.
You might be liked and trusted, trusted, top of mind, but most people suck at being top of mind. That's why they're spending all this money on content marketing. But the Peloton is I actually reached out. I'm trying to connect with Peloton right now because there's a huge celebrity influencer I think that we could partner with and send them not the bike, but the new treadmill. And people are like, oh my gosh, that's $5,000. I'm like, $5,000 to get somebody who's a super influencer to love the brand and love you. Like you'll spend $5,000 on a third of a sponsorship at a conference and get nothing from it. Like it's just, it's amazing, but it's, a lot of the things that people spend money on in marketing and biz dev is bar tabs and dinners because everybody does it. So they think they have to do it and they just look around and everybody's a sheep. And doing something weird like sending a $5,000 or even a $500 or $150 gift blows people's minds because they're used to spending $17 on a box of peanut brittle. That's their gift. That's not a gift.
Yeah, they're not
swag or trinket.
I bought a expensive car the other day, and I got I got peanut brittle.
You did not.
Yeah, and I didn't even want it. Like I'm like, where can I get rid of this stuff? Because I'm not eating sugar. I don't want it.
They spent money. This is what most people do with gifting. Their swag, their trinkets. A gift is, we call them artifacts anymore because a gift an artifact should be based upon the value of the relationship. It should be something lasting, something meaningful. And so they spent, let's say $15, $10, $25, $250, doesn't matter the number. They spent money to have a negative impression, a negative thought in your head. They spent money. I see people do it with sending hams to Jewish people. Like that's an extreme example, but I see it all the time. But you'll never tell them that they offended you or that they annoyed you or that they created an obligation. It's like guilt-inducing gifts. That's not a good gift. A regift is not a good gift. And people are like, oh, my gift got regifted. I'm like, that means it wasn't thoughtful. It sucked. Like, you actually have to put an obligation on another person. And so if people do it with food, it's one of the reasons we talk about the top 10 worst gifts to give. Gift cards are on there. Food is on there. People are like, why is food bad? And I'm like, you only get 1 impression. And people are on so many different diets right now that gluten-free and paleo. And the likelihood of you offending somebody on top of it not being a good cost per impression is so high. It's like out of the 10, those are 2 of the top 10 by far.
I've got a drawer full of gift cards that I don't know how many thousands of dollars worth of like food and Starbucks, but it's just sitting there and I never use it.
And you don't remember where it came from either.
No way. I want to get into referrals because this is something personal to me. I help, I'm probably one of the best, if not the best, franchise consultant out there. It's just because of my experience. I've been doing it for so long and I actually, own franchises and started a franchise as a franchisor. So I just get it. I'm in it and it's easy for me. And I care about people. And so I'm horrible at asking for referrals. Like my past clients, they come to me and they're like, Eric, do you want a referral? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Because I really do. But I'm horrible at asking because I never want them to think like that I'm trying to get them to give me business. But now I'm starting to see like there are a lot of franchise consultants out there who don't know anything about franchising. Even if they've been in it for a long time, they just care about the payday. And they don't understand the brands that they're referring to. They might understand at a sales level, but at a deep level, they don't understand and they're just pushing people because they're believing everything the salesperson says. And me and a handful of other people that are my friends, we don't do that. Like, we really care about the people that we work with. And I will take the phone calls, the first phone call from a referral. If someone refers me a lead, someone that is a friend of theirs or an acquaintance or a family member, I will take that first phone call. If they come in off of my website, they talk to Michael first. And it's a great thing. Michael's a great guy and he helps them, but he weeds people out before they get on my calendar. So all that to say that I want referrals from people. I hate asking for referrals. What do you say to somebody like me?
Yeah, well, I say that you should have sold Cutco back 19 years ago because they teach. I mean, it's like the whole business. People are like, oh, is it door knocking? Is it canvassing? I'm like, no, like they teach you how to go make the appointment of selling knives. You're selling thousands of dollars of knives. Make it fun. And then at the end, like, if you make it fun, people want to, especially when you're a college kid, but in general, like people refer not because to help you, they refer to help themselves. Like they want to look cool to their friend. And so if you do a good job, like it's pent up. They want to go connect, somebody that's going to refer because everybody loves to be the deal maker, the connector, and look good. And so it's probably built up inside of them. What we teach is you pour gasoline on the fire by not only doing an amazing job and loving and taking care of them through the core of your business, which in your case is helping them buy a franchise. But when you start sending gifts afterwards and loving on those relationships, not because like you have to, you're doing it because you want to, not because it's Christmas, not because you just signed a deal and they just paid you, the franchisor sent you a big check. But if they realize like, oh my gosh, like Eric wants referral and Eric is going and keeping the relationship going well after the paycheck, that inspires them to want to reciprocate. And so I think that you got to do a good job. People think like, oh, if I give great gifts, like I'm going to get referrals. I'm like, no, if you suck at your core business or service or product, nobody wants to refer that to their friends or clients. And if they do, they refer down. They'll never refer up or at their level. Like financial advisors are like, John, why am I not getting referrals? I'm like, one, you're not answering the phone call and taking care of the core business. And even if you are, you're not showing them that you operate at their level. And gifting is one of those things where if you play at a world-class level in your core business and then you send cool gifts at a king level, then people start to view you as a king. And most people do things really cheap. It's like you would never take your client out to, stay at McDonald's and while you're staying at the Ritz-Carlton. Like you would want them to be congruent. And so I see a lot of people that will do one part of their business at a certain level, at a Ritz-Carlton level. And then they do the other at a Motel 6 and they wonder why they're not getting the referrals, the deal flow, the phone calls back. And it's because you're confusing your relationship and saying, I thought they were world class, but they're starting to send me some crappy stuff, or they're not returning the phone call, or they're not doing the little things. So what I'd tell you is, you got to do your core business well. You got to let people know, like you work it into your conversation. Hey, so-and-so, I was just working with your friend so-and-so, and they just sent me a referral, and this is how I took care of them. And so it's unlocking subconsciously, oh, he likes referrals. Oh, he wants referrals. But you're not coming at them and saying, please, the nicest compliment in the world is to give me a referral. Like when I see that at the bottom of like people's like email addresses and whatever else, or I see it on the back of their business card, I'm like, that's weak sauce. Like that's not how you ask.
That's
you
desperation.
Ask by showing people. That's desperation. And it to me, it does work, but to me, it's playing weak versus coming into it and playing at a world-class level and playing strong.
Speaking of a world-class level, I was reading in your book, Giftology, about the Ritz-Carlton experience and some of your team members, like wanting them to experience that. And I'm sure there are business owners that talk about the Ritz-Carlton experience, or maybe they have the Ritz-Carlton experience, but they've never let their employees experience it, or they haven't experienced it. So tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, I think most people are like, John, they're all about prospecting and whale hunting. Oftentimes I'm like, well, what about your internal customers? And like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, if you want your clients to feel like the Ritz-Carlton, then you like have to give that same treatment. Like I gift my interns better than most people gift their $1 million clients or their $1 million franchisors. And the reason is I want to attract my interns. I want them to come and work for me. It's a recruitment effort. And the way you start a relationship locks into somebody's mind the way that they expect to be, treated and viewed and whatever else. So when somebody starts something, I don't wait for them to serve, years of service. oh, you've been serving for 52 years, then you get the gold watch. Like, no, you've been working with us for 52 minutes. And so I'm a big believer in start with your internal employees and clients and relationships, especially employees though. So, we do things for our employees, like we pay to have their houses cleaned every other week. And people are like, well, how much does that cost? And I'm like, $2,000. I'm like, how do you afford $2,000? And I'm like, you'll spend $2,000 on health insurance and 401k and all these other things that are just like baseline things that nobody brags about their 401k, but they will brag if their house is cleaned every other week. And it makes their life easier and their family's life easier and their spouse. And so we look for ways to model to our employees, and we're not perfect, but I think if you talk to our employees, we get like $20,000 worth of value from doing things for them, letting them stay at a nicer hotel, letting them experience getting the gifts that were like, oftentimes people like the event planners will reach out to us and like, John, like, hey, we need to order gifts for these 100 attendees. I always send a nice gift to the assistant and the event planner, the exact same thing that the CEO is getting, because they're oftentimes ordering and taking care of all these cool things, and they're not getting treated that way. That to me creates bitterness. It creates discord. It creates a divide. And to me, like, I want everybody rowing the same direction and want everybody saying, I love sending out gifts to external people because I'm getting treated that way internally. Like, to me, that just makes sense if you want to have alignment.
So franchisees, if you caught that, what he's talking about is that is the relationship with your franchisor. The best franchisees that I've been around give gifts to the franchisor, not necessarily the founder, not necessarily the CEO, but to the people that are taking care of them. And most of the time, that is a lower level employee that is critical to your business.
Yep. I tell people all the time, I send Cutco, like they're still one of our biggest vendors. I send Cutco executives, but also the line people, the people that are manufacturing, engraving the product, gift wrapping it. I send them gifts. And people are like, you're buying millions of dollars worth of knives. Why are you sending gifts to the person you're buying product from? I'm like, I learned it from OC Tanner, this $800 million company in Utah. They're the largest buyer of Rolexes in the country. And when Rolex comes to town, guess who pays? They do. They don't let Rolex buy. They're like, we don't have a business without our vendor. We don't have a business without the people we buy from. And so it flips the script because they're used to having to wine and dine and take care of people. And when you take and show them gratitude and appreciation, their mind explodes and like, oh my gosh, like I'm always buying for them and they're buying for me when I should be buying for them. Like it just messes with people's head in a good way. And it shows people, like people want to see, like they want givers to win. Like Adam Grant wrote the book Give and Take. Like when you are a taker, you have a target on your back. When you're a giver, everybody around you wants to lift you up and see you win. And that's where people are like, oh, what's the ROI? And I'm like, well, that's not ROI, it's ROR. Like, what's the return on relationship? Like for me, it's 7 figures. Like if you take care of people, it comes back. It could be 5-fold, 10-fold. I've seen it up, 1,000-fold. But people are like, oh, that's stupid gift. That's cute. Like I have people that knew me back in college, like, oh, you still doing that gift thing? I'm like, yeah, still kind of doing
it's working out. It's working out for me.
Last week I was talking to the New York Times. But it's kind of working out. Like, so it's, but people don't take it seriously.
So we've talked about some people that are in our businesses that you may not be thinking, the support level people, employees, and not just the big people. But there are times when we want access to the key person. For you, it was Cameron Harold. Cameron's been in franchising. Helped put 1-800-GOT-JUNK on the map. He got started in the painting business early on, and he's just an incredible speaker with some great books. He's been a guest on the podcast as well. But you wanted that relationship. What about somebody that wants a relationship? Maybe it's a key vendor. Maybe it's a key referral source. Maybe it's like the mayor or somebody that's really important that can feed them business. How do you go about gifting to establish that relationship or get your foot in the door or be heard?
Yeah. Well, I think ideally you're building relationships with a lot of people that might have access to that person. Early on, I didn't have a team of sales reps out there advocating for me that were, CEOs and whatever else. I had to create those relationships cold, which cold means it takes longer. Most people send one gift and they're like, didn't work. And I'm like, the Cubs took me 7 years of sending gifts before they became a client. 7 years. D.R. Horton, the largest home builder in the country, 7 years. Most people are like, wow, I played the long game. I did it for 3 months. I'm like, that ain't the long game. Like, that's just not, you're not even on the starting block. So for Cameron, I heard him speak at an EO event out in Vegas. And I was like, I want him to be not just a client. I want him to be a mentor and advisor. I can't afford his like $20,000 coaching, all this other stuff. And so I found out that he loved Brooks Brothers. He was going to be coming to Cleveland where my chapter was like 4 months later. And I basically, cause I invited him to a dinner and a ball game. I thought like, that's what most dudes do. And most people do like, hey, golf, dinner, ball game. Like that's the same playbook as all of your competitors. So that, and like Cameron's going to go on 75 dinners. So when I invited him to the dinner and the ball game, he like begrudgingly said yes, cause he didn't have anything else going on. But when I found out he loved Brooks Brothers, I ended up going into Brooks Brothers, put down the Amex, and I found out it was what his sizes were as well. And I bought one of everything in the new fall collection, all the jackets, pantsuits, belts, and it was $7,000. And then we went to the Ritz and outfitted his hotel room to look like a Brooks Brothers store. So when he came in from travel, like you could tell he didn't want to go to the dinner and the ball game. When he came back down from going to his room and taking a shower and coming back down about 25 minutes later, his eyes were like the size of silver dollars. And he said, John, whatever you want to talk about, for as long as you want to talk about it, I'm all ears. And so the reason we went from like begging to speak for free to now like I'll speak in Australia for Volkswagen at $45,000. Cameron, when I was like at 10,000 barely, Cameron would start referring me when he was double booked. He's like, John, you need to go speak for 15 or 20,000 for these guys. I'm like, but Cameron, I'm not charging that much. He's like, you are now. And he would sell them on me speaking before I had a book or anything. Like he became like, the reason I say there's a 50x return on that relationship is because he's basically become a salesperson. He's become a client, a friend, an advisor, all these things over the last 15 years. But it all started with that crazy act of kindness that was no strings attached. I didn't ask for referrals during the meeting, but after the dinner and the ball game and the close, which ironically, Cameron came back and paid for all the clothes. He's like, John, the act of generosity was the gift, the thoughtfulness, you shopping for me, knowing I wouldn't have time to go shop for it while I was in town because his flight was delayed. He's like, either I'm going to guess and round up by 50% or you're going to tell me how much the clothes were that I picked out and I'm going to write a check for that. So that part cost me $0. But every quarter after that, I sent him another gift, no strings attached, no asking for anything, just to pour into the relationship. But that's the power of, most people are like, why didn't you just give him a gift card? Why didn't you just buy him one shirt? And I'm like, because that's not radical generosity. That's lame. That's what a safe, like weak sauce, like what I call like a mush cookie, like salesperson would do. But if you want to play at a king level, there's risk. Cameron could have thought I was a stalker. Or he could have said, you're like, what are you doing? Like he could have ghosted me for dinner. So there's risk involved with doing it, but the payoff of doing that, even if one person out of 10 thinks you're an idiot, the other 9 that love you more than outweigh the one person who you hit on a bad day and send the wrong gift to them or whatever else. But most people are like, they get inside their head and they play with fear. And because of that, if everybody was a great gift giver at this level, it wouldn't work. It'd just be marketing noise. But because most people suck and are at a 1, even if you're mediocre at a 3, you're probably going to stand out from the 1. And so for us, that's the way we go after, whether it's, cold whales or whether it's taking care of, like our warm, like inner circle, our top 250.
See, this is going across the board. We're talking about the whales. We're talking about the people that are consistently in your ecosystem and they're your sales team out there. Franchisees, as you're listening to this, think about your own business and you've been trying to get different relationships. You've been trying to establish relationships with people in your community, but you might be doing the same thing everybody else is doing, and you're probably getting the same results as everybody else. Hopefully this is encouraging you to think a little bit differently about your strategy, because that's what makes everybody that does something in business that is radically different, they usually have success, and it does come with risk. I mean, like what you just said, people are like, yeah, it worked out with Cameron, of course. But when you were putting down the Amex for $7,000,
my business partner thought it was nuts.
Exactly.
He actually said it. He said, if it doesn't work, it's coming out of your draw. That was how much belief he had in the idea. Now he believes in it now. And he's like, yeah, you want to do something crazy for, some crazy, like influencer or some pillar of the community or whatever else. Like, all right, like, let's figure out, like, does it have to be 7,000? I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay. It's still like he's the CFO, COO, so he still fights it, but he's seen like, when you're booking at, $45,000 keynotes when you were a farm boy goat milking, 20 years ago, like he's seen the evolution and the payoff over time, but it's still like, there's still times where I'm like, man, And sometimes it does backfire. Like, I can't even speak about one particular instance within the last 18 months. I mean, we went crazy. It was tens of thousands of dollars in one gift. Didn't work. Blew up in our face. Crickets. Now, it didn't turn into anything bad, but it was and it still may turn into something. Like, you never know, like, what's going to turn out. But there are times when we quadruple down on something, doesn't work. It was like crickets. I was like, are you serious? Like, it took me 6 months to plan this thing out for a client and whatever else. But they're okay with it because they've seen the other results of some of the other people. But we were both dumbfounded that it didn't work. But nothing works 100% of the time. But I tell people all the time, how's the billboards working out for you? They're like, well, it's okay. How's Facebook ads? Oh, we're getting a 2x return. I'm like, what if you could get a 5x return, a 10x? Who are the 10 or 20 people that you need in your corner? Even if you're a small business owner running a Jimmy John's or whatever, like, there's corporations that could be buying from you. I mean, you look at like a Chick-fil-A, they've done great about building relationships with corporations to be able to get that ongoing, consistent business. There's a reason that they're slaying it. And it's because they've played the long game. They have the relationships and they're willing to invest in those over the long term. And that doesn't happen, like checking the box and delegating it to some like assistant. Like, this is an executive level decision to invest in your most important people.
Is there a place for swag at any point?
Well, what I would say is that swag is fine, but it's not a gift. You would never, here's the way to describe it. If you were going to a wedding, would you give a franchise secret Tiffany's vase to the couple you're going to go, like, that's your best friend that's getting married?
No.
Never. I mean, and you have a cool brand and people respect you and whatever else, but a gift by its very nature is recipient focused. Now, there are a few times where swag works better and could be considered a gift, and that's when your logo adds value to the product. If you're giving it out to your employees in your Jimmy John's, it's part of the uniform. But nobody's like, oh my gosh, I got a Jimmy John's jacket. Now, maybe like a few of your crazy fans that are out there that are obsessive, but in general, 99.9% of people are going to accept that as a swag, as a promotional product, as you trying to turn them into a billboard. A gift by its very nature is recipient focused. It's their name, it's their logo, it's their family. It's all about them. And so one of the biggest things when people are like, John, how do you send 1,000 knife sets and have everybody be blown away? And I'm like, because I don't put Giftology on it, and our clients don't put their logo on it. We put the person who's receiving its logo, and we're sending it out at a time, not at a conference or a trade show. We're sending it out as a just because in the middle of nowhere. And because of that, that's how you're able to engage somebody in such a way that they receive it as a gift, as an artifact, not as a swag or a piece of promo. So if you're handing out 10,000 t-shirts at the Cavs arena, then by all means, slam your logo on it. Now, don't give a crappy shirt that feels like burlap. Spend an extra $2 or $3 and give one that people actually want to wear. But I tell people all the time, like, giving out mugs and stupid stuff like that, like, people only drink out of one mug. They can only drink out of one water bottle. I would rather give somebody an $80 luggage tag than an $800 watch. People are like, well, that's dumb. And I'm like, if you give an $800 like Seiko to somebody who's wearing a Rolex, what do you think they're going to do with that Seiko? They're going to say thank you, and they're going to put it into the drawer, or they're going to regift it. So whatever you give, whether it's swag, trinkets, or real artifacts, should be best in class. That's why people are like, why do you do the stupid knives still for all your clients? And your clients are ordering all these knives. And I'm like, most people have like the Bed Bath & Beyond set that they got 10 years ago for their wedding that's fallen apart. And you send them one handmade knife that's $200 with their name on it and their spouse's name and their family name. That one knife will be never forgotten and used more than the $500 watch that you could send them. So you can actually spend less money doing this. But it's being creative. And that's really when people are like, John, when a company hires you, what are you doing? I'm like, we're rewiring their brain and getting them to think about their relationships differently. And it's not about what you're giving. It's about who you're giving it to. It's not about what you're spending. It's about how you're redirecting your marketing and biz dev dollars. And so whether somebody's doing $1 billion or somebody's doing, $250,000, it works, but there's different zeros. And instead of sending out 1,000 gifts, you might be sending out 10. But at the end of the day, like, the thought process of making it personalized, not putting your logo on it and turning it into a piece of swag, even if it's a cool set of Bose headphones. I've seen Allstate and different people give out headphones, and you see people over in the corner like scratching out off the logo because they don't even want to wear a set of Bose headphones to be a logo for like Nationwide Insurance. And so most people, like, nobody's ever challenged them on their gift giving. Nobody says, I actually thought less of you as a human and I'm less likely to buy a car from you because you sent me peanut brittle when I'm trying to stay away from sugar. But those are the things that are going through people's heads every day, all day. And so our goal is to lovingly put spotlights on this. And whether they hire a firm like us or they do it on their own, I just want them to start being more thoughtful and more generous in all of their relationships. And I always challenge people, go do this for 3 years and come back to me and tell me it doesn't work. Yeah. Tell me your relationships aren't flourishing and it's not paying off. I've never had anybody come back in 19 years say, yep, I was more generous the last 3 years and my business sucks.
Well, timing's critical too, because Christmas is not a great time to give gifts. And then right after, I bought the car is not necessarily a good time, because I gave you a lot of money and for this vehicle, and I'm getting peanut brittle.
6 figures, and you spent 5 or 6 figures, and then people are like, "Oh, I give referral gifts." I'm like, "That's the dumbest thing on the planet." They're like, "You own a gifting company, and you're saying it's dumb to send referral gifts?" I'm like, "Yeah, you should send a handwritten thank you note." But if somebody gives you a $50,000 referral check or $1 million referral as a financial advisor, as a franchisee, as a franchisor, and they're going to make 50 grand, and you send them $500 gift cards at Morton's, you think you're being generous.
Yep.
In their head, they're thinking, you made 50 grand and all you spent was $500. Whereas if you spent that same $500 at a random time to your top 100 or top 500 referral sources, I see franchisors do this all the time. They're like, "Oh, I got a referral. Here's your Amazon gift card."
Mm-hmm.
And internally, the person didn't refer because they thought they were going to get something. They referred because they wanted to help somebody. And if you would just pour gasoline on the fires at a different time, timing of the gift, timing is just as important, if not more, than what you're sending. So no referral gifts, no anniversary gifts, no birthday gifts, no Christmas gifts. Like people are like, "John, are you the Grinch? You're a gifting company that doesn't allow your clients to order gifts." I'm like, "Do you want to put $1 into the gifting machine and get $10 back out?" And they're like, "Well, yeah." I'm like, "Then don't do gifts when they're expected. Don't do gifts out of obligation. Think about your spouse. If you want to give gifts on anniversaries, birthdays, Valentine's Day, and Christmas, are you earning any brownie points? Like those are table stakes. Like that's just getting you at zero. And in business, it's the same thing. Don't do gifts at conferences. Everybody gives gifts at conferences. Do it as a pre-experience. Do it as a post-experience. So
explain that pre and post experience. Like what?
So if you're having a mastermind, if you're having an event, if you're having a conference, if you're having a trade show, everybody's passing out their swag. Even if you're giving something awesome and everybody else sees everybody receiving it. Like I see it in masterminds all the time. Here's your bag of $1,000 worth of stuff. Well, you look around and everybody's getting the same $1,000 worth of stuff. And none of it's personalized. Typically, it's usually just it's logoed or blank. Whereas if you sent something to somebody and to their family a month ahead of the mastermind or the event or the conference or the trade show and said, "Hey, so excited to host you. You're one of our VIPs. I can't wait to be with you. Wanted to give you something. I know that being away from your family is a big deal. Here's something to honor you and your family. Can't wait to see you." You could send that same gift if you take care of the details. And that's where people mess up. They try to do 1,000 gifts and they're like, handwritten notes. We don't have time for that. I'm like, that's what Giftology does. Like, we don't have time to personalize it. Like, what if we misspell somebody's name? And I'm like, who cares if you misspell one person's name? What about the other 99 that are like, wow, this is like thoughtful. This is for me. This is an artifact. So the pre-experience is sending something ahead of an event or a conference or trade show or whatever else as a lead to create buzz. Or the post is a week or 2 or 3 after. Hey, what are you sending to keep the momentum and the conversations going? All the other stuff. People get everybody jazzed at the event with the speakers. I know, because I go and speak at these things. And then people go back to real life. And you want the phone call to get the deal closed. You want the person to stick their neck out at the next meeting, to bring the committee together, to get all this stuff to go on. Then send something out that's not trinkets, handwritten note. All the details have to be taken care of or else it feels automated. If it comes from Amazon, guess what? Feels automated. Are relationships automated? No. So you have to dial in those details. And that's, those little things. People are like, oh, the little things don't matter. I'm like, if you mess up one little thing, you can completely ruin the experience. Like putting your logo on it. Now it's not a gift anymore. It's a promotional product. The way the executive or the client or the prospect receives it, radically different. And so the pre and the post, that's what we teach people. We'll do gifting for, a company will hire us and like, hey, we want to send gifts. I'm like, great. We'll pick anywhere from 1 to 4 times a year that we're going to send it out, but it's never tied to something. It's tied to the relationship. It's tied as a just because. I was thinking of you just because of who you are, just because of our partnership, just because I want to meet with you, whatever. But it's never tied to, hey, you gave me a deal. Here's your trinket. Here's your tit for tat. We don't want to, like, nobody wants to feel like they're being bought off, but we all love to be appreciated.
I have handwritten notes from people, and I absolutely love them. I still have them. I have probably some of the worst handwriting in the entire world. If I tried my best, which would take 10 times as long, they probably still wouldn't be able to read it. What do you say to somebody that doesn't think they have the time or has bad handwriting like me?
Yeah, I think they'll figure out what it says. That contextually, they'll realize who it came from and the fact that you took the effort, even though you have sucky handwriting. They'll contextualize what it is, but it's not always. I mean, you want the note to be thoughtful. Like people are like, oh, it's the thought that counts, and that is kind of true. But really, it's the thoughtful thought that counts. So you don't have to write like a dissertation, and then have to be like 5 pages long. But the fact of being thought of, like now, like with text message and Facebook message and Snapchat and TikTok and all these other things, everything's digital. When a handwritten note shows up, it used to be like, like physical, like things in the mail wasn't a big deal. Like now getting a handwritten note's a big deal because nobody does it. And so really at a core level, what we're teaching people to do is to think strategically, like, Seth Godin's purple cow.
Mm-hmm.
If it's all brown cows, a purple cow is going to stand out.
Yep.
If it was all purple cows, a yellow cow would stand out. And with gifting or anything else in business, we're all trying to stand above the noise. We're all trying to get people to engage and take out of all the things they could do on their plate to move our priorities forward. And loving on people and doing things thoughtfully and showing that you took the time to think about them, even if your handwriting sucks. And what I'd say is, if you don't have time to handwrite notes, then your priorities are out of order. Because if you say relationships are your most important asset, and then you don't invest in those relationships, which is what most businesses do, we're all about culture. We're all about this. We're all about this. Great. Show me your calendar and show me your checkbook, and I'll tell you what your priorities are in any business. And most people are not willing to commit to the time, energy, and effort in their calendar and in their budget to be able to invest in the people that they say that matter.
We're coming to the end of our time. If you were going in to give some advice to the local gym owner on client retention, what would you say to them, whether it's client retention or getting clients in using some of the Giftology? Is it handwritten notes to their members? What is it?
Yeah. So I'd say one thing, I wouldn't be a giftologist if I didn't offer something for free. So what I'd say is steal my stuff for free, because you probably can't, like you may not be able to afford or want to invest on the front end. Like take the free thing versus the paid version. Before you even go buy the book, go download giftologyplan.com. And it's our 19 years worth of like how we think about who, when, why, it's like our entire playbook for free, giftologyplan.com. What I'd also say is the handwritten note is powerful. You don't have to spend a lot of money, but if you are going to write a note, write it to them. Think about writing it to who oftentimes has to deal with the repercussions of somebody starting a new workout plan, a new eating regimen, the spouse.
Mm-hmm.
Write a note to them and say, hey, thank you for supporting Steve in his new workout plan. Like, I know that like it's the stress, like he's taking time away from the family or from the business or from himself. Like, but this is a worthwhile investment. Thank you for supporting him. Like the more you can take, I call it the inner circle, the more you can take care of somebody's spouse, their kids, their family, their friends, their assistants, their team, like that, pets, like that's what we call the inner circle. And so I would say double down instead of doing like, automated something, pick your top 10 clients or top 10 most important relationships. And then I would say, who are the people that you want to have as your clients or pillars of influence, and start figuring out what makes them tick. And don't like, if they're into hot sauce, don't send them one little bottle of hot sauce. Like send them a 5-gallon bucket of hot sauce. Do something that hits them in the face in such a way that says, holy crap, nobody's ever done this in such a way to get my attention. But I would triple down on your warm market and take care of not just them, but their inner circle. And if you are going to give a gift, like I was talking to somebody the other day that's a dentist, and they wanted to hire us to do all their gifting. And I'm like, and they mentioned, oh yeah, we do this cool local candy company. I'm like, do you realize, like, you're a dentist sending candy? That doesn't make, like, that's not congruent. I've seen chiropractors sending apple pies, not congruent. No, bottom line, like, think strategically, download the plan, get your team together, maybe get your spouse, if you own the gym, get them involved. I will say women are way better at this, emotional intelligence wise and thoughtfulness, than dudes are. Guys are like, hey, I just want to can I just order 100 of the same thing with slam my logo on it and pass it out to everybody and everybody like, I just want something cool. I'm like, dude, it's not about being cool. It's about being thoughtful.
Mm-hmm.
And your significant other probably is way more thoughtful than you are. So why don't you start to learn about the emotional intelligence and think about how to give something to somebody that's going to hit them at the heart level. And that's what long-term is going to matter.
Franchisees, franchisors, think strategically, think out of the box. If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. So if you're getting the same results over and over, you need to do something different. If your client retention is not where you want it to be, if you're not getting enough customers in the door, if you're not building enough relationships, do something differently. Get the free resource, buy the book. John, any last bits of wisdom?
Nah, man, just like I said, go do this for 3 years and come back to me and tell me it didn't work.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to whatever channel you're listening on. If you want my help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business, please visit franchisesecrets.com.